Hello, and welcome to Very Kimberly, the healed side of codependency. When Joe and I went to marriage counseling at another Baptist church, I initially thought that maybe the church might be able to help me. But I quickly learned that would not be the case. This pastor's whole quote unquote formula, as he called it, to save our marriage was simply for me to just obey Scripture and ignore and pretend the real issues within my marriage didn't exist at all. So, as long as I was playing my part for the outside world to see, so to speak, no matter what was going on mentally, emotionally, or spiritually, this pastor felt that our marriage was doing well. It was basically a formula for dysfunction. I was told things like Jesus was abused, your body isn't your own, it belongs to your husband. And my personal favorite, if you were a more submissive wife, your husband would not abuse you. But here's the thing, I was being submissive. I had been submissive the entire time. I had conducted myself in that marriage according to this pastor's dysfunctional formula, obsessively, believing the same lie this pastor was trying to sell. That if I just shrunk myself as a person and catered to whatever whim my husband wanted, no matter if it was sinful, that Joe would love and care for me and the children, and that he wouldn't abuse us. But that formula did not erase the hatred in Joe's heart, nor did it stop the destructiveness of his words and behaviors, not to mention the addictions Joe kept hidden in secret. In other words, I was living, breathing proof that this formula of saving a marriage did not work. And because I could not get the spiritual support that I needed from the church, or any other person for that matter, I had no other choice but to go straight to God Himself, which is where I really should have gone in the first place. For several months, every lunch break and every car ride to and from work, I cried out to God to give me and the girls a way of escape. I remembered from my days in business college my Catholic friends telling me about the patron saints. So in my desperation, I even requested the prayers of Catholic saints like Saint Rita of Cascia, the patron saint of the abused, and Saint Jude, the patron saint of impossible causes. When I look back at that desperate time in my life, I can't help but see how God still used certain people to help me, but yet not save me. The ladies I worked with at the office were all Christian, and we all worked together and got along very well. There was a coworker in particular whom I'm going to call Rhonda, who is a great inspiration of faith. Her and I would often talk about God, Scripture, and following Jesus. The other ladies at the office would sometimes say that we were having church, but nobody minded. Rhonda was always kind, cheerful, and genuine, much like my own mother. And I honestly do not believe that I would have gotten through that season in my life spiritually if it wasn't for Rhonda and the other ladies I worked with at the speech clinic. During this time, I had also put the girls in preschool at a Christian development center where the director and teachers there also showed me great empathy and compassion, as well as kindness and encouragement. See, none of these ladies had the power to rescue my children and I from Joe, but God still used them to preserve my faith in Jesus, to save us in every way possible. But as time went on, I started to develop the physical symptoms of narcissistic abuse. When I went to sleep at night, I did not dream at all, and if I did, they were nightmares. Many times I would dream that I was half awake, but suffocating, and it would take every bit of my mental energy to pull myself out of it and wake up gasping for air. I was still the only one taking care of the girls, taking them to doctor's appointments, to preschool, etc. I was running all of the errands, doing all of the household chores, and cooking all of the meals. I was exhausted all the time, never seeming to get enough rest, and my joints and muscles were starting to ache. My hip would go out occasionally from sciatica as well, and my entire body started to feel like it was 20 years older. It was around this time that my dad called and said that Mom's foster parents, the ones who loved her as their own daughter and loved my sister and I as their own grandchildren, had passed away within days of each other. This meant that since Mom had already passed away, my sister and I would inherit their house in Pennsylvania, and I would have to stand in for my mother as executrix to my grandmother's estate. My foster grandparents lived on the other side of Pittsburgh, in a very rural area about an hour away from where I grew up. This would be the same area where Aunt Dottie and that entire family lived. But after the funeral, Joe quickly confiscated several items from their house, like lamps and jewelry that he thought he could sell on eBay. I expressed my desire to move into my grandparents' house in Pennsylvania to Joe, and even though he pretended like he was entertaining the idea, it became increasingly obvious that his only intention was to hoard every bit of my own inheritance for himself, continuing to financially neglect mine and our children's needs. See, Joe's recklessness and addictions had placed our finances in shambles, and his solutions were just as irresponsible. He ended up refinancing the mortgage using my credit instead of his, having to place my name on the house. And he was accumulating more debt to pay off other debt, like borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. I was the one bringing in most of the money into the household, but I was still never allowed to have any say as to how my own money was spent. So Joe's whole intention for my inheritance was to cover up his mismanagement of our finances and continue nurturing his addictions. It was also during this time that my physical ailments became more frequent and increased in severity. My joints and muscles ached every single day, and I could no longer put off going to the doctor about it. The doctor did find evidence of arthritis as a cause for the joint pain, and fibromyalgia as a cause for the fatigue and muscle pain. I was prescribed antidepressants again, anti-inflammatories, and muscle relaxers. I was just 30 years old. But as a formal legal assistant, I can tell you that the estate process takes time, usually much longer than people anticipate. So, because Joe didn't have my inheritance to bail him out right away, his addictions started to surface openly. It started with him admitting that he was continuing to watch pornography, but it didn't seem like he had any intention of stopping. This was what Joe was going to do, and I was just going to have to deal with it. But not long after, Joe said that he needed alcohol to help him cope with the financial problems. It's just this one time, he said. I needed to help take my mind off of things this one time, he said. My body was still in pain from the arthritis and fibromyalgia symptoms, even though I was taking medication for it. So I was really too occupied with trying to function in day-to-day life through the pain to have any objections. But then Joe insisted that I drink with him after putting the girls to bed. But I was able to get by with only one drink, using my medications as an excuse. As Joe guzzled down the alcohol straight from the bottle, his personality had turned into something I had never seen before. He started insisting that I watch pornography with him and act it out with him. I can't even tell you how many times I said no, or please, I don't feel well. I don't want to do this right now, or please stop. But he never stopped. After Joe passed out, I remember standing outside on the porch, sobbing. Thunder sounded in the distance, and lightning flashed in the sky. And I looked up and questioned if God would rescue me, if this was enough for God to intervene this time. I cried myself to sleep on the couch that night, terrified that one of the girls would wake up from the thunder, go into our bedroom, and wake up Joe, who hadn't slept off the alcohol yet. In the morning, Joe acted almost overly remorseful, saying it would never happen again. But then, just a few weeks later, Joe casually mentioned that he still had a secret stash of alcohol hidden in the house, but refused to tell me where it was or dispose of it. He finally confessed that he had been binge drinking flavored liquor in the middle of the night while the girls and I slept. But he made no promise that he would get professional help. No promise to get rid of the alcohol, and no promise to stop watching pornography. And it was then that I realized the abuse was only going to get worse. I remembered all the horror stories Mom would tell me about growing up with an alcoholic mother. And again, I cried out to God to give me the grace that I needed every day for about 2 weeks straight, agonizing over the fear of actually escaping and our uncertain safety after we did. My grandparents' empty house was still up there in Pennsylvania. My grandmother's estate still waiting for me to finish finalizing it. Amber was having a baby in the fall, and her baby shower was only a month away. Joe, the girls, and I were already planning on driving up to Pennsylvania for the baby shower. It was that open door. It was that open door for the girls and I to finally escape. But that door would not be open for long. So I had to prepare quickly. I hope that you'll join me next time. And until then, this is Very Kimberly encouraging you to keep striving to be on the healed side of codependency.